Watch out, Annabelle and Chucky, we've got someone new to add to the Killer Doll cinematic universe, and her name is M3GAN.
M3GAN! What's wrong with you?
Don't worry, Cady. I won't let anything harm you. Ever again. It's nice to have.
What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and today we're going to talk about the latest horror, sci-fi / little bit of comedy movie brought to you by Blumhouse Productions and written by Akela, who's known for writing *Malignant*, and James Wan, who I think everybody knows. He's the guy that created the Conjuring franchise, Insidious, and a little movie called Saw. So as I do with all my reviews, I'm going to go over a little bit of information about the movie, then get into the things I liked about it, the pros, and then finally the things I didn't like. And then really to wrap it all up, just whether or not I'd recommend you check out the movie. So M3GAN follows Gemma, who is a roboticist that works at a toy company. She's played by Allison Williams, who you might know from being the girlfriend in Get Out. Her character ends up in a situation where she has to take care of her sister's daughter. And while that's going on, she ends up creating a new doll that uses AI, or artificial intelligence, to basically become the best friend of the kid that it plays with. And as we know, with every movie ever to have anything to do with AI at all, it does not go well. It's almost as if they're trying to warn us. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier, this is a Blumhouse production, so it is produced by Jason Blum and his team. You also have James Wan with a producer and writer credit on the movie, as well as Akela. Is it pronounced Akela or Akela? I'm not sure how to pronounce the person's name, but either way, a great team behind it. Definitely a group of people that are very familiar with writing and creating horror movies. And although this movie doesn't have a particularly inflated budget, I think they did a really good job with the money that they had. And it looks like they are going to make their money back real quick. Now, if I had to describe M3GAN by using other movies as references, I would say this is, of course, Chucky meets Ex Machina meets The Terminator meets a scene from Aliens, which are all great movies. Well, I guess not Chucky. Chucky's a character, but Child's Play. But does this hold up to all of those classics? Well, the first thing that might draw a red flag is that this is coming out right at the beginning of January. And for those that are unfamiliar, January is basically the dumping ground for movie studios. Usually the big movies come out either during the summer or at the very end of the year when everybody is on holiday break. And really, January, there's not much in theaters, so studios will just put out whatever they have that they just need to get out there and try to make as much money as they can back. So that can be a concern, or it can be a great opportunity if you have a lower budget movie that you don't know if it'll make a ton of money, but is quality enough that people will want to see it. And I would say this movie is pretty good. It's categorized as a horror, sci-fi / comedy movie, and I will say it's not particularly scary, so I don't know how much of a horror movie I would consider it to be, other than the fact that, of course, the doll is killing people. But it's not really in a way that scared me at any point. Certainly there's sci-fi, that's undeniable. And as far as comedy is concerned, there are a few moments that are pretty funny, but I don't think any scenes that are going to be super memorable or ones that I'll be laughing at with my friends in the future. Really, I think if I was going to categorize this movie, it would, of course, be sci-fi, but more of a thriller and family drama. Now, as I understand it, this movie was originally supposed to be rated R, and they cut it down to get a PG-13 rating, which, you know, is a business decision that I guess made sense for the studio. But because of that, we're probably missing out on a lot of things that would have pushed it more into that horror category. So let me get a little bit more into the things that I like about this movie. For one, the cast. I think that most of the people in the movie did a great job. Allison Williams, who again, you know from Get Out, was fantastic in her role. She plays this kind of disconnected aunt to this young girl. She's very much focused on her career and is not at all a person who would do well with kids. And so when she's put in the situation where she has to care for her niece, she plays it in a way that might be a little over the top. Some of the things she does, no reasonable adult would do, but she plays it well enough to where you can understand where her mindset's at, especially if you consider that she didn't have a strong relationship with her sister to begin with, and probably didn't have much to do with this niece. But she is very good. Also, the girl that plays the niece, I believe the actress's name is Violet McGraw. She plays Cady. She is very good for a young actress. She has a few scenes where she really has to show some deep emotion, There's a scene where she freaks out, and it is honestly scary. I know the actual villain of the movie is M3GAN, but her character kind of scared me a bit there. And also, kind of what I said about this movie being more of a family drama, that's another thing that I really enjoyed about it. It explores the relationship between this niece and her aunt, as well as what it is to be a young kid coming up in a technological age. It really does have a message about, they mention screen time in the movie a few times throughout it, where how much time are you allowing your kid to be invested in technology versus real human interactions in the real world? And then likewise, how much time are you spending with your kids, or are you just tossing them an iPad and going on your way? So it doesn't get particularly preachy with that message, but it is something that watching the movie, you can just take it at its surface level, or you can really think about what they're trying to get across in the movie. And I think that is a great sign. That is something that movies should aspire to do. You know, it's one thing to just have a slasher flick where a doll goes around and murders people, but to be able to do that, to entertain, to have those kind of tense, scary moments and some comedy, but also to express a message that will have you leaving the theater thinking about, wow, am I not spending enough time focusing on my kids, or am I too wrapped up in technology, or what happens when we get to a certain point as a society? That's fantastic. That's really good storytelling. It also does have some strong emotional moments. I don't think I'm going to really spoil anything for you in this movie, because if you've seen the trailers, you pretty much know everything that happens in it. But of course, we know that Cady's parents die at the beginning of the movie, basically, and that's why she's with her aunt and why her aunt has to take care of her. And that actress carries a lot of the emotional load throughout the movie, and there are scenes talking about loss and dealing with loss that are very powerful. Surprisingly so, for a movie that you probably thought wasn't going to be all that deep. Now, all that being said, I do think it's a very good movie, but there are a few things that I could have done without, or that I thought weren't that great. So let's get into those. So as much as I thought Allison and Violet were really good in their roles and they brought a lot to it, there is another actor in the movie who you're probably familiar with. He's a very famous comedian, Ronny Chieng, who I think is a hilarious comedian. I've seen several of his stand-up specials and I think he is super funny, but I don't think he's that strong of a dramatic actor. And although his character is in a lot of ways the comedic relief of the movie, it is still jarring when he's on screen, in that there's a clear gap between his acting ability and the people surrounding him. It really feels like he's just kind of reading his lines, as opposed to, more inhabiting his character and speaking the truth of the moment, I guess, to use a cheesy actor phrase. Again, I don't want to crap on the guy because I do love him as a comedian. I think he's great, but it's just something that stood out to me while watching the movie. Every time he would be on screen, there was a clear line there that just separated him from the rest of the actors in the scene. Aside from that, the only other negative I really have is that it takes a while to kind of get to the climax, to the real violence of the movie. There's a scene probably about midway through where something dramatic does happen, or a couple of things. But as far as the big, being chased down by the killer moment that we're all looking for in these kinds of movies, that doesn't happen until basically the very end of the movie. And it felt kind of rushed. So you have all of this buildup where we're just getting to know the characters and going through all the story building. And then the climax just felt brief. And now I don't know if that is because they had to edit it down to get that PG-13 rating. Again, originally, I believe this was supposed to be an R-rated movie, so I imagine there was a lot of extra gory scenes that they had to cut out. But either way, it just felt like the ending was a bit rushed. I'm curious to see if we're going to get more. I imagine so. I think this movie is going to be very successful. In fact, I remember hearing something about it might make its budget back on the first weekend, on the opening weekend, which is insane. So they will more than likely want to be making some sequels, but I'm curious to see how they loop that into the story and, how we go from there. But all in all, I really enjoyed M3GAN. I think this is an oasis of a movie in the desert of January that we're used to. And although I personally would have liked to have seen an R-rated version of this, I totally get why they had to bring it down a bit for a broader audience. And this is absolutely something that you should go and check out in theaters, probably with a group of friends. This is certainly something that you're going to want to see with a big audience, as big an audience as possible. But of course, these are all just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've seen M3GAN, what did you think? How do you think this stacks up against the other killer doll movies that we've seen? And of course, if you want to see more movie reviews, ranking videos, reactions, all that good stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.